Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Matt.
And welcome to Sofa Reviews. Today we're watching another goddamn Jack Black film, Gulliver's Travels.
Released in 2010, it's a modern adaptation of the classic book by Jonathan Swift.
Although that acknowledgement by Matt is more credit to the author than the film ever gives.
Regardless, we start with a rather nifty looking intro. Which
then leads us to our so-called hero of the film, Gulliver.
He's interviewing a new starter at a job in the mailroom.
I'm Quint, born 1990. I didn't think that was possible.
Yes, it turns out sex wasn't banned in 1990.
With his new assistant, Dan, we get to see a day in the life of Gulliver.
We are the mailroom guys. Mailroom guys are meant to be seen and not heard. And ideally, not even seen.
You're thinking of children.
Anyway, we see that Gulliver has a crush on one of the women at the office, Darcy.
I just love the way he stares at me like a slack-jawed moron.
Having only known Gulliver for an hour at best, Dan tries to convince Gulliver to ask Darcy out.
Clever.
Okay, so then do it.
Next time I see her, I will.
Hold on.
Mm.
Hi again.
Oh, hey, Darcy. I just remembered I get claustrophobic in elevators.
Of course he doesn't, even though he's got a perfect opportunity. She, for some reason, actually seems to enjoy his company and even asks him what he's doing at the weekend. 6 minutes in, and I have no sympathy for this guy.
Later, Dan explains that he's now been promoted and is the head of the mailroom.
Which clearly shows exactly how useless Gulliver was at the job. Still, Dan tries to give him more advice, again presuming to know him.
The reason you didn't ask her out, and you never will, is the same reason that you're not gonna leave the mailroom. And you've been here like 10 years, man. You know, you peaked.
Attempted to prove Dan wrong, Gulliver goes up to Darcy only to chicken out at the last minute, picking up a travel application form instead.
After watching him procrastinate for a bit, we then get to see him plagiarise, with all the subtlety of an 11-year-old.
Nevertheless, this still impresses Darcy and she sends him off on a trip to Bermuda.
Right, you have no experience of boating and you're being sent to the Bermuda Triangle. Surely now, with death quite likely, you could just tell the truth instead.
So Gulliver sets off on his boat alone and relaxes at sea.
How to build your own robot? Yeah, that's gonna happen.
It is going to happen.
He wakes up to find his ship in the middle of a storm and heading towards a watery wormhole.
After tumbling through the wormhole, he wakes up again. Only this time he can't move.
I am General Edward Edwardian, commander of Lilliput.
He manages to escape, only to get pulled back down by his pants.
And you can tell that this is a family-friendly comedy because I can't imagine a more horrific way to die.
They manage to restrain him properly before presenting him to the king.
I wanted a bracelet, not a great big hairy beast.
Oh, do you already have one of those then, you tedious bitch?
Later, we see Gulliver trapped in prison, where he makes a new friend in Horatio.
Glossing over why they happen to have manacles big enough for a giant, Horatio explains that he's in prison because he's in love with the princess, but that's not allowed because he's a commoner.
Anyway, the next day, General Edward is steering Gulliver around so that he can till the fields.
Until the Blefutians attack to try and kidnap the princess, leading Edward to race on Gulliver to save the day.
Bizarrely, it seems like the princess wants to get kidnapped before Edward arrives at the scene.
I shall save you, my princess!
My princess.
Edward leaves the convicted criminal able to take control of the beast. Let's hope he wasn't lying about what his crime was.
Horatio releases Gulliver, allowing him to save the princess.
He just lets the bad guys escape and puts the princess with Horatio, which is technically going to be another crime.
Before they can dwell on this, they demonstrate their system of bells.
I love it.
The fire has raged out of control.
My father is trapped.
You guys got to invest in a more efficient warning system.
Yeah, you need something more efficient than instantly knowing what's going on with a good level of detail.
Of course, Gulliver is on hand to urinate on the fire, saving the king.
This tells you everything you'll need to know about the level of comedy in this film.
Luckily for Gulliver, the king takes the approach that getting pissed on is a lot better than burning alive, so Gulliver gets treated as a guest and he even manages to get Horatio released.
They have a feast to celebrate, and so Gulliver carries on lying.
I was actually known as President the Awesome?
Edward is seemingly the only person that recognises that Gulliver might be lying. However, the king and the rest of them offer their services to him.
Seriously, we are ridiculously good builders. And we are your servants, awesome Gulliver.
Well, I don't want to take advantage, but...
But you are going to take advantage.
It is at least quite creative how they have all the little people build everything for Gulliver.
Of course, we're expected to believe that this is done in less than 7 days, yet alone that they could even amass all the resources to do this.
Gulliver has them act out scenes from other better movies, only replacing him as the star of each story.
And because Edward is the bad guy, it turns out he's the only one who can use logic.
Oh, wait! I'm sorry. You mean to say that you actually died in this shipwreck?
Yeah, I died.
That's what you're telling us, that you actually died.
But I was resuscitated.
It's preposterous.
Later, Gulliver gives Horatio some advice on how to woo the princess.
There's no particular sign I'm more compatible with.
There's no particular sign that I'm more compatible with.
I just want your extra time and your... kiss.
Kiss.
Beauty emanates from your lips.
Right, well, it seems women are morons, romance can be replaced by just reciting song lyrics, and independent thought is worthless. I might kill myself.
This is interrupted as Edward arrives to see the princess.
They have a little chat, and Edward explains how he's pretty awesome.
I captured a hawk today.
Although the main point of this scene is basically to show that Edward and the princess are not right for each other.
Oh, fun courtship you and I have. It is over now. Must go. Those villagers shan't pillage themselves.
They will rape themselves, though.
Anyway, they find Gulliver's boat, and this gives him the opportunity to check his messages on his phone.
Wherever you're hiding, stay there. I never want to hear from you again.
Darcy found out that he'd copied everything and hates him now, so it's a happy ending about a lying moron who gets his comeuppance.
We're only halfway through. Anyway, he has a chat with the princess, who reveals that she's falling in love with Horatio, so they chat about what he should do.
Do you think the king would mind if I stuck around for a bit?
Oh, well, of course not, Gulliver.
Well, that's fine. Your lies caught up with you, so now be a man and hide from your problems.
Anyway, for no discernible reason, they decide to make Gulliver a general alongside Edward.
Unsurprisingly, Edward isn't too happy with this, so he decides to test Gulliver by lowering the defences and also becoming much cooler.
Oh no! Our defense system has failed. We shall never reach our ships on time. Careful now. Mind yourselves. Oh, what a mess.
So Gulliver heads off to fight the entire Blefuscian armada himself.
As he's still not learned his lesson, he tries to get the armada to pretend to be destroyed.
But because they're evil, they decide to surround him and open fire, not taking advantage of Gulliver's mercy.
Luckily, Gulliver is rather fat.
Later that evening, a drunk and depressed Edward goes to visit the princess.
Despite doing everything he's supposed to, Edward is actually just ignored or treated really badly, and I actually feel sorry for him, although he comes close to a moment of realisation.
In love. What do you love about me? Name one thing. Inappropriate, Edward.
The princess tells Edward that she's ending the engagement and tells him to leave immediately.
At which point he strolls out to find his world now more closely resembles hell.
This is the final straw for Edward, and he turns traitor, pledging his allegiance to the Blefuscian king.
This beast has transformed Lilliput into his own sordid and rotten little kingdom.
Everything that Edward has said is perfectly true and justified. Plus we know that Gulliver is a lying dick. Yet we're meant to believe that Edward is the bad guy.
Anyway, with the help of the Blefuscians, he builds himself a giant robot to challenge Gulliver.
Note to Michael Bay, that's more what a Transformer should look like.
Gulliver is easily defeated and is forced to confess his lies to everyone.
I'm sorry. I lied.
I knew it!
Oh look, Edward was right all along. Maybe you should have listened to him before he destroyed your kingdom.
Having been beaten, Gulliver is sent into exile.
Hey, is this island where we dare not go really as bad as they say?
It's delightful!
On this island, Gulliver is captured by a young girl. Owen Darcy shows up and gets captured by Edward.
The girl puts Gulliver in a dress and plays with him in a dollhouse.
She even finds time to play her favourite game, date rape.
Okay, we're kissing.
Luckily for Gulliver, Horatio somehow manages to find him and convinces him to come back and save Darcy.
I'm your best friend.
He's your best friend, and in fact your only friend. And he's only friends with you because you broke him out of prison. Just something you might want to mention in your suicide note.
Gulliver manages to escape using the parachute of a dead pilot.
And obviously the slacker can escape where the trained pilot couldn't because...
Because he's a man on a mission of love.
You have no idea how much I hate you right now.
Gulliver gets back in time to see Darcy and the royal family in prison.
Is now a good or bad time to tell you about the crush I've had on you for the last 5 years?
After she's discovered what a liar you are, has been imprisoned and is now fearing for her life, is of course the most romantic time to tell someone about your crush.
Really?
Darcy thinks it's sweet, but Gulliver explains that he has to save the little people before he leaves.
So he challenges Edward to another fight, which starts off, and Edward at least seems to be having fun with it.
Shocking, isn't it?
Of course, Darcy and the princess are both upset that Gulliver is losing again.
Hey, that's not fair. He's cheating.
Right, so the robot isn't cheating, but the electric shock is. How about you keep your mouth shut, you dozy tart?
Horatio manages to get inside the robot so that he can beat up Edward.
Now that's cheating.
Thanks to Horatio, Gulliver manages to beat down the robot, defeating it with a wedgie. So Horatio and the princess get together, Edward is dealt with, and Darcy finds a way to finally shut up Gulliver.
Instead of perhaps doing something intelligent, like making a joke reason as to why they're at war, they instead start singing, in a scene that can only be described as incredibly painful. So we're going to share it with you.
Good God, y'all! What is it good for? Tell me! Say it so!
Finally, we see Gulliver and Darcy back in New York, with Dan still in the mailroom.
That's what you get for having aspirations.
Hi, I'm Dan from the mailroom.
Hey, Darcy.
And I'll do whatever it takes to not be from the mailroom.
And so the film ends, and in conclusion, I really enjoyed this film. It's a fun, silly kids movie with a nice mix of action, romance, and lots of references to other movies.
Right, well, references to other movies show a lack of creativity and the fact that you can't come up with jokes, and the action and the romance are pretty poorly done and can best be described as mercifully brief.
But it is nice to see a tale about a guy that isn't anything special and is all about him finding himself and believing in himself to become an unlikely hero.
The guy's a complete loser, and for some reason everyone else tries to help him pull his head out of his ass and sort his life out. But he's too stupid to realise this and needs a fantasy world in order to finally realise what everyone has already been telling him.
That may be, but it would be boring if he just figured out what was wrong with his life and solved it there and then. It's far more entertaining to have a big world full of different characters that we can focus on aside from Gulliver.
It's lucky, really, that there are other people to focus on, as Gulliver is just Jack Black playing Jack Black, but the rest of the cast are all worthless apart from Edward.
Well, there you go, there's a character you really like. He's a really good villain, he sets himself up brilliantly, and when he accepts that he's the villain, he becomes really cool.
He's also more sympathetic than the hero, more capable, more resourceful, and is only actually the villain because he follows the rules of his society that everyone else casually disregards, and he at least has enough of a brain to see through Gulliver's lies.
Ultimately, it's just a honest kids movie that keeps the toilet humour to a minimum, has a good message about even if you make mistakes you can still fix things, and has a pretty cool fighting robot.
This is a film that has no jokes, only one likeable character who's the bad guy, seems to imply that ambition and honesty will not help you, and that if you really want to get a girl, all you have to do is stare at her for a while, lie to her a lot, and then put her life in danger.
Well done, you big fat beast!